three. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Tonight we light the candles, and as I watch them shine, I think of what they stand for, this heritage of mine. It's more than just a story of people long ago. It reaches to the present, and deep inside I know I am a light that shines with love and promise. The darkest night can never dim my glow. Imagine life where each of us ignites the flame inside, standing close together, standing for what's right. A million ways to say I am a light. The candle called the shamash burns with a special flame. It shares its fire with others so they can do the same. From the youngest to the oldest, there's so much we can do. Like those who came before us, we must burn brightly too. I am a light that shines with love and promise. The darkest night can never dim my glow. Imagine life where each of us ignites the flame inside, standing close together, standing for what's right. A million ways to say I am a light. Hand in hand, heart to heart, one by one, that's how it starts. I am a light that shines with love and promise. The darkest night can never dim my glow. Imagine lights the flame inside. Standing close together, standing for what's right. A million ways to say I am alive. I am Shamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, et HaShabbat, Lasot et HaShabbat l'dorotam, Brit olam, Brit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, Odhi leolam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, Odhi leolam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat, Shabbat, vayinafar. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, Odhi leolam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, Odhi leolam.
A 1, 2, 3, 4. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la.
Hello, this is a public safety announcement. I am Rabbi Flip from Congregation Micah. At Micah, inclusivity is in our DNA. It's in our kishkas. We're a tapestry community. Atheists and ardent believers, singles, married couples, families, family members who identify as gay or lesbian, bi, or non-binary. We don't mind if you are more Jewish than Moses or only care for the food. It doesn't matter to us if you only have a father who's Jewish or you have two Jewish mothers. We have no problem if you unabashedly support Israel with us or you show her a certain kind of tough love. You can speak or pray in Hebrew or stumble on transliterations. Members of our Micah community are the custodians of the Torah's commands to love our neighbors as ourselves and to be kind to the stranger, recalling those ancient and not so ancient times when no one was kind to us. So how can we balance our values with the very real world in which we live? A world in which we must protect our synagogue, our children, ourselves from those who wish to do us very real harm. First, we ask you to please identify yourselves when on campus. Please don't assume everyone knows you, even if you're a regular. And always remain alert, attentive, friendly, but be our eyes too. Know that we are also part of a larger network that coordinates critical incidents and shares information and intelligence about really potential threats. So if you see something, then yes, say something. Our campus security is constantly being re-evaluated and worked on, and we are also going to explore more federal, state, and local resources in the future. As with all things at Micah, we will honor these two competing needs so that we make sure that we remain compassionate but are not naive. Anti-Semitism remains. Here at Micah, it will make us more caring, more inclusive, more careful, and more vigilant. Thank you. Lech Shalom. Go in peace. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome, everyone. I am, as always, Rabbi Philip Rice, better known as Rabbi Flip. That's Miss Lisa Silver over there, musical director. I love her. I'm going to talk less in the next few weeks and months so we can hear her more. That's one of the goals, because she, in fact, like many cantors, sets the tone, the vibe, the musical experience as we tell the story of the Jewish people during our worship services, and she does it better than anyone that I know. So it is with both joy and sadness that we welcome Shabbat these next few weeks and months, and what we're going to do is feature her music and her talent, and we're going to honor her, and we're going to take that joy of Shabbos into our hearts as we always do. I'm going to do something unprecedented. I'm so proud of all the people who braved the cold weather. We welcome you from afar, wherever you may be watching, whether it's warm or cold out at home there, but there's a little snow happening, and these people came out. So this is not unprecedented to do in this room. I do it on the holidays. It's not unprecedented to do because on Sundays I always bring, but anyone who wants to come forward and be a movie star and help us light our Shabbat candles is going to do that now. Somebody should get up. You made it this far to the threshold. Deborah's coming, Pam's coming. You'd think that'd spark a little momentum, but we'll take these two ladies. If you have a prayer book, you don't need one, but we're on page 2.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, creator of the universe. By your commandments we are sanctified as we kindle the lights of Shabbat. Amen.
Okay, Pam and Deborah are clearly warming up. It's still chilly in here. We're going to have to warm up the room. We will invite Sabbath angels to bring some of their warmth with us. Try and keep up.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashait, Malachei Elyonim, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashait, Malachei Elyonim, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hashait, Malachei Elyonim, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyonim, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyonim, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyonim, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, מלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, מלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שלום לכם, מלאכי השרת, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שאתם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שאתם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום לכם, מלאכי השרת, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך
I don't know if it's the masks. I see a little nodding like they're davening. But we're warming up. I feel like we're warming up, and maybe this will help. We'll invite you to please rise as we chant the words of Hatzikadosh.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
בעלמא תברך ירותי, וימליך מלכותי, בחיי אחון וביום אחון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו.
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקדושה, לעילם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בלמה ואמרו.
Amen.
יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה, יאי לה 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 לה. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך, המבורך לעולם ועד. המבורך, המבורך לעולם ועד.
We invite you to take your seats and to sing with us another original by Miss Lisa Silver.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונזמח בדברי תורתך ומצוותיך,
everlasting love you gave your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot. And Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise, we'll rejoice in your Torah forever. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, hukim u'mishpatim, otanu lamadata. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
All right, Madeline's just going to come get in the on-deck circle. That's over here in these chairs. I'm going to already break my rule and talk for a few minutes. Sometimes I start writing something and I'm going to talk. There will still be sermons, or little drashot, we like to say interpretations. And this didn't make the sermon, but I was thinking about the Torah portion this week from the book of Exodus, which we read this instruction not to oppress the stranger. Ourselves having experienced slavery as a people in the past. So get this. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is asked about the reach of the obligation to love your neighbor as yourself. Who is my neighbor, he asks. Luke chapter 10, verse 29. See, the book of Leviticus anticipated this question, and it offers like a stunning response. It says, the stranger is like your neighbor, and you owe, like you would owe to your own kid, you owe the stranger as well. See, the Torah sort of forcefully makes clear that the poor and the downtrodden, the vulnerable, the oppressed, the exposed, the powerless, they are our neighbors. And we are called to love even those who are not our kin, those who do not share our same socioeconomic status, those who do not share our same political views. Because, after all, we remember all too well what vulnerability as a people feels like. Now, Deuteronomy, that's later in the Torah, subtly introduces still another dimension of this obligation to love the stranger. Along the way, it offers, I think, a remarkably moving message in theology. The Lord your God is God supreme, says Deuteronomy, the great, mighty, and awesome God who shows no favor and takes no bribes, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, loves the stranger, provides for them with food and clothing. You too must love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. See, you get it, right? The text begins by praising God as great and as mighty and as awesome. But what What makes God great and mighty and awesome? What does that consist of? And according to our Torah, it's not because God created the world. It's not because God demonstrated God's ability to smite enemies. God's grandeur is rooted in God's fairness, who shows no favor and takes no bribes, in championing the oppressed and the downtrodden. The God that Jewish people are taught to worship, in other words, is a God who cares for the persecuted, for the distressed. And all of this helps us understand sort of Deuteronomy's insistence on this obligation to love the stranger. It is a form of what we say, quote, God, of walking in God's ways, which we try to do humbly here at Micah. And just as God, quote, loves the stranger, so must we. I think here the Torah represents really, it's a radical challenge and obligation. If you want to love God, you have to love those who God loves. You have to love the fatherless and the widow and the orphan and the stranger. And Deuteronomy gives us two distinct but intertwined reasons for what lies at the very heart of Jewish ethics. We love the stranger both because of God and because of what we ourselves have been through. So Exodus teaches us that we are not to oppress the stranger. And Leviticus sort of amplifies this demand. It magnifies it and says, not only must not oppress the stranger, we must actively love the stranger. And then here comes Deuteronomy. Get ready, Madeline. And raises the stakes even higher. It says loving the stranger is a crucial form of walking in God's ways. And we chant words of the Torah in that spirit now. Words from the book of Deuteronomy. And Madeline's going to help us.
Okay. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Thank you, Madeline. We move on. If you'd like to perhaps read with me. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before we ever stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together.
Lord, oh, se fele,
night arrives, and it can be a little frightening. It's been a frightening time. And so we have prayers that ask for God's protection.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomrenu l'chayim. Ufros aleinu sukkar shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukkar shlomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake in morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Amen.
Who's celebrating what? Something, somebody kills the momentum of a service if we've got nothing. Someone might have to make something up. A birthday, an anniversary. My house is COVID-free.
Yay, that's what I'm celebrating.
Nothing? I'm not gonna, what do you got? Retirement! And a grandchild on the way, I think, right? Yeah, okay, so you don't have to get up. We'll say this. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu. We ask this great power in the universe that blessed any and all of our ancestors with celebratory things, standing on the threshold of two major events. We ask that God protect you and bring you joy in both of them as you transition to these new roles. And we ask also that all of these happy things that are happening in the life of our community continue to be shared, if only at home with you all watching, bringing more joy into our lives and into the life of the community and the Jewish people. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shechechianu v'kiyumanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Everybody says, Amen. We thank this power in the universe that created us and helps us along the way and enables us to reach these threshold moments. Thanks for bailing me out. Okay, we're going to keep going. We're going to sing in honor of the Sabbath a little Vishamru. Are we ready?
We are.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat l'dorotam berit olam, berit olam. Beni uvein b'nei Yisrael, Odhi le'olam. Beni uvein b'nei Yisrael, Odhi le'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. Beni uvein b'nei Yisrael, Odhi השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם, ברית עולם.
We rise together for Tefillah, our central prayer.
אדוני צפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשן עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We take these next few moments for our own silent thoughts, prayers. When you're done, you may be seated.
והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני, צורי וגואלי. יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני, צורי וגואלי. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Be acceptable unto you, O God, my rock and my redeemer.
Our world, we pray, is getting better, but is still sick from dis-ease And in our own community, we have those who are still searching for healing. We mention by name Steve Geringer and Paul Richter, Crystal Miller, Charlie Baugh, Dick Eskin, B.B. Weinstein, Alex Morgan, Bill Drangowski, Edria Ragusin, Janice Grossman, Jill Gutnick, Florence Wittenstein-Saperstein, Mike Harris, Caitlin Kopelman, Michael Groh, Karen Kotlanow, Jessica Waldron, Tara Spratt, George Hahn, Ann Norman, Julie Haynes, Gina Gulyami, Alan Sherman, and Judith Mundell. We add these names if you've got one.
Susan Bernine, Sherry Gallagher.
And all sick people, we invite you to sing with us.
For the hurt of body and of soul, for the suffering and pain, as you heal the ones who came before, may you heal us just the same. Refuat hanefesh behaguf el narifana. Refinu Adonai refuah shalema. Refuat hanefesh behaguf el narifana. Refinu Adonai refuah shalema. For the hurt of body and of soul, for the suffering and pain, as you heal the ones who came before, may you heal us just the same. As you heal the ones who came before, may you heal us just the same.
Shabbat Shalom. An Orthodox rabbi writes in a contemporary halakhic responsa, quote, "Above all, we must foster a moral climate in which acts of terrorism are an anathema." He cites Psalm 104, verse 35, as a proof text, which reads, "Yitamu chata'im min haaretz, let evil deeds cease from the earth." And then he quotes the Gemara, the Talmud, Tractate Barachot, page 10a, underscoring the use of the word chata'im. He comments, "Meitiv ketiv chota'im, chata'im ketiv." We pray for the eradication of evil deeds, not evil doers. It means that according to the Jewish legal opinion of this one rabbi, we are to yearn and pray for and work for a day when there will be no terrorism, no evil on earth. And when it comes to justice, to holding those who are perpetrators accountable, the intent of Judaism is not retribution, but prevention. That's good stuff. I mean, it sort of makes you want to pick up the latest edition of Contemporary Halakhic Digest and keep it on your nightstand, doesn't it? Don't you guys read this stuff like I do? Okay, the rabbi continues, quote, "Public condemnation and censure are essential, lest silence be regarded as approval, and approval, heaven forbid." He writes that, heaven forbid. Approval will only lead to further violence. He writes from a place of historical understanding, at least of the silent world and the Jewish people, not 24 hours now distanced from International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Is it not the dream of all of us that instead of Israel accepting reparations for the misdeeds of the Nazis, that we had just prevented the whole show of the Holocaust in the first place? I mean, if those in power could have found their voice, their courage, and not have remained silent, the threat of terrorism against Jews is again rising. In every Jewish school and synagogue and summer camp and organization is a potential target of evildoers. And within these institutions, including our own, are people, many of them children, who we need to protect. Violent attacks on the U.S. have become a regular occurrence. They're like almost natural disasters. There were deadly shootings in synagogues in Pittsburgh in October 2018, and in Poway, California in April 2019, and then at a kosher market in New Jersey in December of 2019. And now, a rabbi and 3 congregants taken hostage at a Reform synagogue near Fort Worth, Texas. And after a standoff that lasted more than 10 hours and involved an elite FBI hostage rescue team and the bravery of a certain rabbi, the Jews in the synagogue were freed unharmed. And the perpetrator, the evildoer, identified by the FBI as Malik Fasil Akram, was killed. If we Jewish people are to take seriously the notion of justice, especially as we understand it here at Micah through the lenses of mercy and humility, then we must take seriously the notion of prevention. Now, with wildfires and hurricanes, we can search for human-made causes. We can seek possible remedies. But for many Jews, like victims of natural disasters, there remains this sense of helplessness. We are tempted to conclude that we are simply never safe. Not even a country as good as for Jews as the U.S. has been. However assimilated or secular we are, however often we come to Micah or participate in Jewish life, whether we are tapped into it or not, we all take personally, chas v'shalom, an attack on Jewish people. And we shouldn't remain silent. Now, we know there are Jews who are connected solely to Jewish culture. Are they like talking Israeli politics? Or maybe they teach in our religious school here. Or maybe you're a grandmother who Zooms with Jewish friends in New York or Florida. Or maybe you're a non-Jewish grandchild of a Jewish Holocaust survivor. Because Micah celebrates all of these Jews and these opinions and these connections, the pious and the heretical, the observant and the indifferent. And so it is now, and so it will always be. But again, none of us are disinterested bystanders when hostages are taken in Texas. And all of us, I think, shudder at left-wing anti-Zionism, often framed as anti-Semitism, or at anti-Semitism that's pervasive on the xenophobic right. You should know how many people reached out to Rabbi Laurie and I after what happened last week from the Muslim community and from the Christian community to express their support and to share their disgust. So the numbers tell us that the number of Americans who identify as Jewish appears to be holding pretty steady, actually, right? And as DNA tests reveal Jewish roots to more people every day, a growing number of Americans will perceive maybe these violent attacks on Jews as attacks on them or on us. And yet it is a small percentage of us who will actually be in harm's way. The Jews at risk of anti-Semitic attacks will include, right, the small maybe growing number of those whose clothes make them targets, like the Orthodox, the Hasidism. There are teachers and students at Jewish schools. There are nurses who work for Jewish homes for the aged. And, of course, there are us, these sort of eccentric holdouts, right? Like any of us participating in life during a global pandemic. Some of us Jews will continue to enter places like synagogues, having decided that praying with fellow Jews is almost risk worth dying with them. So what does the Torah have to say that's a little more uplifting? Be strong and of good courage. Remember days of old. One of the top items on the Torah's agenda is to turn memory into action, usually by way of empathy and moral responsibility. So how does that work? Appealing to our experience of defenselessness in Egypt, the Torah this week seeks to transform us into people who are strong and independent and capable of defending ourselves, and yet also people who still see others who are vulnerable and exposed, rather than just looking past them. Parashat Mishpatim, it is called. This week, it contains perhaps the most well-known articulation of this charge: you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. What if the stranger, the one who is alien and unknown to us, is out to get us? It's a fair question. The person we don't know, but we let into Micah. The Torah's call appeals to our memory. It's not based on like a rational argument. It's emotional. There's no use of like geometry. There's no security concern, it seems. It is rather an urgent call, an urgent demand for empathy. Since you know what it feels like to be a stranger, you must never abuse or mistreat the stranger. And the prohibition is so often cited that it's easy to miss how radical and not obvious it is, right? The Torah could have responded quite differently, right, to the experience of oppression in Egypt. It could have said, since you were like exploited and tyrannized and no one did anything to help you, you don't owe anyone anything. How dare anyone ask anything of you? It chooses the opposite path. Since you were exploited and oppressed, you must never be among the exploiters and the oppressors. You must remember what it feels like to be a stranger. See, empathy animates, it intensifies our commitment to the dignity and the well-being of the weak and the vulnerable. And it's God who's supposed to hold us accountable to this obligation. So, on one level, of course, the Torah is appealing to the collective memory of the Jewish people. The formative story around which we orient our collective life is about this harrowing sojourn in Egypt and our eventual miraculous redemption. We shouldn't oppress the stranger because we as a people remember what oppression can mean. So, okay, we won't oppress anyone. Do we still have to provide coffee for a stranger? Let them out of the cold. Bring them into our sacred space. So here the Torah maybe needs to be personalized in its demand that we remember. Each of us is obligated in the course of our lives to remember times when we've been exploited or abused by those who had power over us. And such experiences are blessedly rare for some people, and tragically they are part of the daily bread for others. Was it an angry teacher or an uncaring professor who gave you a bad grade? Was it a tyrannical boss or an unsympathetic supervisor who made your life a living hell? From these experiences, the Torah tells us we are to learn compassion and kindness. Every one of us has been brave enough to venture somewhere alone. Was someone kind to you? Did they reach out? Were they hospitable? Did they offer you a cup of warm coffee on a cold night? Because in reaching out to talk to someone, you can often assess their intentions. It may be tempting to imagine a world in which the good guys learn compassion from experiences of vulnerability and suffering, while the bad guys learn only hostility and xenophobia. But if we were a little more honest, we all have to wrestle with the ways that each of us has both responses at the same time. Part of us responds to the experiences of suffering by wanting to make sure that no one else has to endure what we did. But there's another part of us, a part of us that feels a little entitled, above reproach. If you've been through what I've been through, we can hear ourselves saying it, right? You would understand. I don't know anybody anything. Leon Weisletter once remarked to the Jewish people, the Holocaust enlarged our Jewish hearts and it shrunk them. And so too is our current vulnerability to evildoers, to a virus. It's caused our hearts to harden. And like our lungs, to expand and to shrink. So here's what we're going to do at Micah. We're going to rise to the Torah's challenge. We're going to double down and nurture and cultivate a compassionate response and allow our safety to be an animating principle of our lives. Literary scholar Elaine Scarry hauntingly asserts that the human capacity to injure other people is very great precisely because our capacity to imagine other people is very small. By reminding us again and again of our vulnerability in Egypt, the Torah works to help us learn to imagine others more so that we allow ourselves to hurt them less. The obligation to love and care for the stranger is a basic covenantal requirement incumbent upon Jewish people. We surely have moral obligations that are incumbent upon us simply because of the fact that we're human beings. In its recurrent appeals to memory, the Torah seeks to amplify and intensify these obligations and to remind us, even when it's difficult to hear, that the fate of the stranger is our responsibility. This mandate, it seems unfair and overwhelming, but loving the stranger is a fundamental aspect of the Torah. So what's a Jew at Micah to do? Well, if we take this obligation to serve God seriously, and if we're worthy heirs of the Jewish tradition, then we have no choice but to wrestle with these words and to seek to grow in empathy and compassion. And at the same time, if this is based on memory, we must consider our recent memory, which now calls upon us to combat the rising threat of terrorism and to protect Jewish children and our synagogue, and to remain alert and attentive. Because as I've said many times, being welcoming seems to be in our kishkas here at Micah. But it's true of the whole Jewish community, and we are part of a larger network that coordinates critical incidents and shares information and intelligence, and we at Micah are going to use it. And we're going to take, safety and security training, and we're going to learn the necessary instructions that will allow us to raise our awareness to potential threats. We intend to keep a watchful eye on our community so that we can sort of sleep safely and pray soundly. And as with all things at Micah, we will honor these two competing needs so that we make sure that we are neither callous nor naive. These horrific events of anti-Semitism remain in our minds and our hearts. And so it will make us here at Micah more caring and more inclusive, more careful and more vigilant. Because above all, if we foster a moral climate in which acts of terrorism are anathema, then we'll be working to eradicate evil deeds from the earth, or at least prevent them from happening. And that's part of our mission here at Micah. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, I think we need a little uplifting, and by that I mean standing up. Is there anyone who really wants to open these ark doors? It's an easy gig. I can do it. Sarah Morgan's coming! The words to Elena on the screens are on page 202. We invite you to please rise.
Aleinu l'shabech ladon hakol, lateit gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu k'uyeh haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our community continues to mourn the recent passings of Norman Heyman, Lucille Foley, Sheldon Grossman, and just the burial this afternoon of Stephen Cooper. Our hearts go out to all of those families. We also recall on the anniversaries of their deaths Alan Perlman, Flora Goldstein, Edward Sorkin, Martha E. Blattner, Marilyn Lindy Dushin, Abraham Flansman, David Corr, Gerald Chernovsky, Richard Lowell, Harry Lippman, Jacob Coral, Dorothy Goldstein. If there's any other names I've neglected to mention, please say the names as my hand passes across the room. We think of all people who have been a blessing to humanity and invite you to join me in the words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlik malchutei v'chayakon uv'yomachon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam ulalmei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha b'richu le'ela min kol birkata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damliran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shamaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. We say Zikronah Livracha, that their memory should always live on as a blessing. I invite you to sit briefly. Look at this. We're coming up on the 7 o'clock hour. We run a pretty tight ship.
Yeah.
Okay. Next week, less talking, more music. Tomorrow morning, Torah study begins at 9 a.m. That is on Zoom. You can get the link from our website. Want to let everyone know that Mahjong is going to return on February 1st. That's next Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. in our social hall. There will also be in-person midweek for religious school, and that takes place on Wednesdays and Sundays. This Sunday, also beginning at 9:30. Schmooze and Views. You can join us in person or via Zoom. That's on Thursday, February 3rd at 10:30 a.m. Sports Trivia has been moved to the second Tuesday of the month, and that begins February 8th, and that's at 10:30 a.m. And this first session in the returning will be on Zoom. Link also available on our website. 3 days left until the end of January, and we will stop collecting toys for the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital Toy Drive. You can drop them off right here. And then on February 1st, we will start the second Harvest Food Drive, and you can bring non-perishable items. Lastly, there are always more details on these programs and other offerings, including Zoom links, in our weekly email blast and on our website. And of course, you can like us on socials because we're hip that way. That's what I got. Let's do a closing song.
All right. How about a little Oseh Shalom?
Amen.
Oseh Shalom b'mamav, u'yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, imru amen. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu, el kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom,
thank you so much for joining us virtually and in person. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.